They went to Center City and pulled surveillance camera images to see if they could figure out where she was. And from those images, they were able to chart her movement from her destination when she first came to Philadelphia, all throughout Center City as she walked down different streets and around different bars and nightclubs.
At this point, it was a matter of gaining all this footage and then putting it together to come up with a timeline. It was very tedious. When we looked at the video, I could see Christina with the murder suspect walking with their arms around one another. I remember Broad and 13th was where they got into a ride share, and that's when the car took them back to Christina's, to her condo.
That unidentified man was not Andre Melton. So police now had another suspect that they had to locate. Police put out an alert basically saying that they were looking for information about this murder, and they were asking the press to distribute that information and try to drum up tips for them.
If anyone has any information, please contact police.
They put out 2 sets of surveillance image. One from the night that Andre Melton came back to her apartment, and the other depicting the man she was seen entering her apartment with on the night she died. Investigators didn't know whether they were related at the time, so they put both out to the public and said, "We are looking for information on both of these men. Please contact us."
On August 23rd, I get a phone call. This person identifies himself as Andre Melton. I was a little surprised that I'm talking to the guy that we were looking for. And he wanted to make it clear. He said, "I stole her stuff, but I'm not going down for a murder."
Detective Weiss was not convinced at all by his conversation with Melton. He thought, okay, even if he is not the person who committed the murder, he was likely involved in some way. So this interview did very little to convince him of Melton's innocence.
Early on, there was speculation that these 2 gentlemen were connected in some way. But ultimately, as investigators learned more about each individual, they found that that was not the case. Investigators continued to solicit tips, one of which came from a gentleman who was a driver, who said that he recognized the man and the woman in the photo as somebody that he had actually given a ride to from Philadelphia to Ardmore on the night of the murder.
My detectives interviewed the driver that had picked up Christina and the suspect that night. There was nothing that seemed like anything was forced.
He said that Christina had approached him, had actually flagged him down instead of using the app, and said that she needed a ride because there were some people on the street harassing her. So after some convincing, the driver agreed, took Christina and this other man to their destination in Ardmore. He said during the ride they appeared to be very friendly, very affectionate with each other. When they arrived in Ardmore, it became apparent that Christina did not have any money to give him, despite promising him earlier, "I will pay you in cash for the ride." She offered him an American Express credit card, which he had no way of taking. The man that Christina was with offered him $100 cash if he were to stay parked outside his building for 10 to 15 minutes while they went inside. He exchanged phone numbers with this person, and the person promised to call him when he was ready. 20 minutes went by. He didn't hear anything from the passenger, so he simply decided to leave and return toward Philadelphia.
Around 4 a.m., Christina somehow, in a very charged situation, was able to contact her cousin. And although Christina didn't leave a message or speak, her cousin could hear the background. And what she heard was a man forcefully telling Christina, "Don't call the police."
On August 26th, police got a call from a man who said that he knew the identity of the person seen with Christina in the surveillance footage that was released to the media. This was somebody he had been roommates with in a psychiatric facility in Philadelphia.
So they check out that tip, and they were able to trace him back to an incident in Love Park in Center City, Philadelphia.
At one point, he followed a woman into the family court building and started harassing her. He began causing a scene in the building, kicking windows, screaming and yelling.
So he was taken into custody, and he was put on a 72-hour hold, a psychiatric hold.
This person had told him perhaps the most chilling detail in this whole case. He said that he had recently strangled a woman and had bragged about the event and said that there's no other feeling quite like feeling somebody's life escape them as you choke them.
Unfortunately, he was admitted as a John Doe, and so the police weren't able to learn much at all because he was able to check out before they were ever able to interview him.
As all this is playing out, they get a call from a family member who lives in Philadelphia and saw the video that police released. They identified the suspect was Jonathan Harris. He'd recently been released from prison.
Jonathan Harris had served a sentence for robbery. He had just been released on July 15th, 5 weeks before Christina's murder.
By the time they identified him as a suspect, he was already in the wind.
On August 28th, we issued an arrest warrant for Jonathan Harris for homicide and related charges in the death of Christina Kraft.
The police were concerned Harris was considered to be dangerous and unpredictable. They were worried that it was only a matter of time before he hurt someone else. They needed to apprehend him right away.
Once we positively identified Jonathan Harris as the subject, we had to find him. So we started doing some searching, find family members, find friends, find anybody that we can that can talk to us about where he may or may not be. And at one point, detectives spoke to his sister, and we ultimately learned that there was a bus ticket that was purchased, and that Jonathan was on that bus, and that he was headed to Pittsburgh.
The Philadelphia investigators contacted the Pittsburgh Fugitive Task Force to let us know that their suspect, Jonathan Harris, was on his way to Pittsburgh. We did all our background as far as his criminal history, as far as photographs, so everyone would know what he looked like.
Police say that 30-year-old Jonathan Harris had just been released from prison in July.
Harris definitely had significant criminal history, nothing like a homicide in his past, but forcible felonies as far as robbery, drug dealing, burglary. We printed out pictures, made copies, so everyone was actually carrying a photograph of the last arrest photo. Philadelphia told us exactly when the bus would be arriving from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh, so we had the team in place so that we cut off his avenues of escape. And we were lying in wait in a trap for Jonathan Harris to arrive in Pittsburgh.